presentation in just a few moments. But before we do that, a few brief housekeeping points and a review of today's agenda. And that will give everyone time to finish dialing in and getting set up. Hopefully you can all see the slides showing through the webinar software. If you have any technical issues, feel free to use the questions or chat button to let us know that you're having problems. So a brief overview of our agenda for today. We'll spend a few minutes going over some housekeeping issues and how to use this webinar software if anyone is not familiar with it. And I'll introduce our two presenters for the day. Mark Paxton will present a brief overview of Rx360. And then Rick Calabrese, the co-chair of the supplier-led working group for Rx360, will give our substantive presentation on the Quality Agreements Guide. We project that the presentation will last about an hour, and then we'll try and leave 20 to 30 minutes for questions and discussion. So please do feel free to submit questions and engage in discussion. We'd love this to be a really collaborative webinar. But before we start, a few logistical points. This software is wonderful and offers us a lot of opportunities, but also has a few quirks. So please do note that today's presentation is being recorded and may be posted on the Rx360 website. Participants are muted automatically through the GoToWebinar software. If you have not entered your audio PIN, which is on the right side of your screen underneath the audio heading, you will not be able to speak on the call. You are automatically muted. However, the organizers do have the ability to unmute you and able to allow you to ask a question. But if you have not entered your audio PIN, we will not be able to hear you. So if you'd like to ask a question, please make sure that's entered. You may also submit written questions through the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can simply type a question in and hit enter, and we will collect questions and run through them at the end of the presentation. You can also click the blue hand symbol. This will raise your hand, so to speak, and that your name will flash and we're aware that you have a question, and then we can call on you and unmute you to allow you to ask your question or raise a discussion point. And so with that, I will now turn it over to our substantive presenters and allow them to introduce themselves because they are such impressive and experienced people that I cannot remember all of their bios by myself. So first, I will turn it over to Rick Calabrese to introduce himself. Rick is the co-chair of the supplier-led working group, as well as one of the founding members of the group, and has been with Rx360 for a number of years and has been integral to the success of this supplier-led working group. So Rick, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Emily, for such a nice introduction. Again, my name is Rick Calabrese. I am the Global Corporate Director of Quality Systems for Sartorius Corporation. As Emily has said, I've been with the Supplier-led Initiative Committee from its inception, but I've also sat on other Rx360 committees as well. I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and I'm very impressed with how Rx360 is set up, and that's why I offer my services to try and help out and promote the goals and initiatives of Rx360. I'll turn it back to you, Emily.
Thanks, Rick. And at this point, I'll also turn it over to Mark Paxton. Mark is the CEO of Rx360. So, Mark, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and then move right into your presentation on Rx360 as a group.
Sounds great, Emily. Thank you very much, and welcome all attendees to this very important webinar. So, again, my name is Mark Paxton. I became the CEO of Rx360 on October 26th of 2015. We're going through a bit of a transition plan to adopt a more traditional business model as a trade member organization. I was retained by the board of directors to serve as the CEO And in doing so, I had to move from the Food and Drug Administration, where I worked in the Office of Compliance in CBER, specifically within the Office of Drug Security, Integrity, and Response. I was there for about 4.5 years. Prior to that, I actually was in industry and, in fact, worked with PhRMA, that's the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America trade organization in Washington, where I led the International Regulatory Affairs program. I'm a lawyer and an economist by training and education, so I'm thrilled to be at Rx360 in this current capacity. And with that said, I guess we'll go on to an overview for Rx360 before I hand over the substantive discussion to Rick. So with that said, Emily, I'd ask you to go to the next slide. So Rx360's mission is unique, I think. And I think you'll get a flavor for that once we go through all of our overview slides here. But our mission is to protect patient safety by sharing information and developing processes related to the integrity of the healthcare supply chain, and that includes the quality of the materials that are used for medical devices and finished dosage forms. And we have a great message from Guy Villax, who is the CEO of Hovione, and he's also currently the Rx360 board chairman, that I like this statement about patient safety and about our Rx360 program. It's a great statement from my perspective. It says, our current members are pioneers that are building the type of global, all-embracing industry group of the 21st century. Rx360 is working to ensure that patients everywhere can enjoy the benefits of globalization safely. And this is important in our globalized world now for medicines in particular, because this is, when I was at FDA, I used to call it deregulation by globalization, and the regulatory authorities across the globe now are finally getting together and collaborating and focusing on, guess what, quality. So this is a timely subject to have for this webinar today. And with that, I'd ask Emily to go to the next slide. So our objectives are bringing industry and regulators together to protect patients, right? So what do we do specifically? We exchange public information to allow firms to adopt best practices across industry. We bring industry experts together to develop responses and actions or action plans when the supply chain is threatened. I think the most recent example of that was the tsunami that hit the west or the east coast of Japan back in, I want to say 2010, but it might have been 2011. There was obviously, we had a lot of suppliers that were actually producing materials in that part of Japan, and there was concern about radiation at that time, and we brought a number of industry experts together to respond to that potential threat. We also act as a clearinghouse for suspicious supply chain information. We share and conduct and manage joint audit programs. It's a unique program. I think it ultimately will be an industry standard because the objectives are to reduce the cost of auditing for manufacturers who are required to do audits, and we're also relieving the audit burden on the suppliers through our audit program. And while we're still going through process optimization in the management of the audit program, it's something that I think ultimately will become the industry standard. I know regulatory authorities with whom I have spoken with are thrilled about the program. We also consider joint technological development for securing supply chain and detecting adulteration. These are a number of objectives. They're not all inclusive. We're not replacing regulatory systems or oversight. We're just intended to complement as industry those requirements, and in doing so, we also maintain strict compliance with competition and antitrust laws both in the United States and Europe. Next slide, please. So our membership is broad and inclusive. We're global. We're small and large companies. We've got suppliers and manufacturers, branded and generic, regulatory agencies, academia, standard-setting bodies, and other industry organizations also participated as observers. You can look at a complete list of our membership and observership at our website at rx-360.org. Next slide, please. So benefits of Rx360 membership: the rapid dissemination of supply chain and quality information, the ability to identify issues and develop responses when the supply chain is threatened, We again act as a clearinghouse for suspicious supply chain information. The joint audit program that we have and the shared audit report program that we have is a significant benefit for companies that participate. And we work, as I said earlier, with regulatory authorities in a broad number of venues, and we reach out to a large number of regulatory authorities, global regulatory authorities, to help resolve problems related to the supply chain and quality of materials moving in those supply chains. Next slide. This is just how we are organized. It's an organization chart for your benefit. We're a 501c6 volunteer membership or a nonprofit organization. Our members are companies, not individuals. We're structured with our board of directors, our planning committee for the board of directors, and then you can see on the left-hand column our audit operations group that is entirely staffed by either the secretariat or by audit leaders, people within large organizations responsible for the conduct of external audit programs. They provide assistance to us in developing and managing our joint audit program. We have the Supply Chain Security Steering Committee. Within that Supply Chain Security Steering Committee, we tend to be focused a little bit more on downstream from the finished dosage form manufacturer, downstream supply chain issues, otherwise known oftentimes as distribution channels. We have work groups in different regions, China and India in particular. We have a really robust outreach and communications platform that is in development right now. We've got some excellent people from our member companies that support that effort. And then finally, we have a number of focused industry initiatives like the supplier-led working group. I can tell you, if you go to our webpage, you'll find out that we just started a data integrity audit standard program. We have member companies working on that data integrity issue that obviously, I'm sure most of you are very, very aware, is kind of the cause du jour for regulatory authorities across the globe. And we're all continuously adding new programs to our to the Rx-360 Consortium. With that said, I'm going to let Rick introduce to you some of the work and the history about the supplier-led working group, and let him get on with a substantive discussion regarding the quality agreement guidance. Rick?
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. Again, hello, everybody, and welcome for coming today to our webinar. I want to tell you a little bit about Rx360 and the supplier-led working group. Rx360, as Mark described, the consortium, has a lot of different groups and a lot of different tracks for securing the supply chain. One of the things that we started talking about is that this is a collaboration between on all different levels. It's between the drug companies and the biotech and the medical device companies and the doctors and the patients, the supply chain. But it also goes the other direction as with the suppliers and vendors that supply the materials that are used and services for these companies to provide the drugs, medications, and devices that the end user patient has to use. So the thought came up about, suppliers are important to this process. They're integral to the supply chain. And I was approached with, along with Gary Perkins from would we lead a supplier-led working group so we could get together some of the concerns of suppliers and vendors into the industry. So we agreed, and then so there's fair balance in this. We decided that it's not just going to be vendors or suppliers. It's also this committee is also made up of end user companies, drug companies, biotech companies, some medical device companies as well. Through the working group, it gives us a better understanding of the needs of each other and how we can work together to make things as streamlined and as efficient, as effective as possible, so that it's a continuous process from the very beginning of the raw material or product all the way to the final product that the patient will see. There's on the committee, we have representations from all over the world, all different companies. Just to name a few besides my company, and there's Millipore, Sigma, Amgen, Bayer, Teva, VWR, Merck, BASF, Baxter. So there's a lot of different companies that are involved in this initiative. If anybody on this call is interested in being part of the supplier-led working group, on the slide you see there's an information email, and you could email there and you could get more information. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to talk about one of the projects that we have done with our group. And this is actually our third project, and since our inception. We've had different webinars on some of the other product, on our main project before this was our supplier questionnaire template. And now we decided to put together a guidance document for the best practices for quality agreement guide. Next slide. Okay. So the question is, when we're thinking about projects to handle, we're always looking for something that it's going to, if we take it on, it's going to help the suppliers. It's going to also help the biotech, pharma companies, the end users of the suppliers' materials and services to, facilitate a better supply chain. So when we talked about this, we had a few different ideas, but quality agreements kept coming up. This is becoming a focus now with regulatory bodies. It's also becoming a tool now where companies are trying to partner with their suppliers and saying, hey, you're an extension of us, so we need you to be able to commit to these items since you are an extension of us. And we're looking for efficiencies here because out on the market, there are so many different versions of quality agreements. We thought if we put together a guide that would give us the best practices, it'll be easier to go into negotiations to set up and create a quality agreement in the future between the suppliers and the end users. All right, next slide. Okay, so the purpose of the document is very, very simple. Okay, we wanted to take a collection of the best practices across all our members of our working committee, and we wanted to give examples. We wanted to also cite references that could be used in the agreements, and we wanted to put just sort of common sense. How do you deal with certain situations that are becoming more and more common? For example, multi-site agreements, or if you're dealing with the customer, you're dealing with a vendor, where you're not buying directly from them, you're buying from a distributor. So we've looked at these kind of issues. We also just talked about the difference between a guide and a template. All right, so after much discussion, it was decided that all these documents are, the quality agreements get reviewed by the legal entities in both parties that are involved, and there's certain legal requirements in different jurisdictions around the world. So what we opted for is that instead of trying to get a template, let's put together a guide that says, hey, these are the best practices. This is a way to look at it. This should streamline your process. So this way, people could still use their own templates or design their own templates, but then take the information from here to make it more effective, to help the facilitation of the agreement process as well. Next slide. All right. So if you look at the guidance document, the way it's set up, you'll see on the left side we have the different main areas of the document, and with those little red arrows, and then then in the main body of the guidance document, it has the more detailed of what each part is. So here we have the scope. Okay, we're talking about establishing the communication between the parties. If an agreement is legally required or not, and looking at risks and maybe initial draft products that might be out there on the market already for a basis of starting with a template for your agreement. Next, we look at the structure, and this is the template or structure of the document, the context, the products of the parties, how do we organize the document, and ensuring that you have a logical flow and the numbered sections so you can reference the document. I'll tell you, we've discussed in our meetings where sometimes you receive a document and there's no numbering structure in there. So when you want to refer to a section of the document, you have to almost like cut and paste and say, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So numbering, even though it sounds like a minor point, is very critical when you're going through a negotiation process. After that, we're talking about framing of the content. So we want to make sure that the template is comprehensive, it's relevant, and it's focused on exactly what the business is on hand. You want to ensure that if the supplier that you're working with has a multitude of different business groups, and you're only using one of them, that you have an agreement with the business group that you're using, and not trying to clutter up things and put an agreement in place with everything that the supplier does if it doesn't all pertain to you. Technical content, that's important. The quality terms, what is specific, what aspects of your quality system do you want to make sure is extended or referenced in the quality agreement. And then we want to make sure all the proper legal terms are referenced in there as well. Next slide. Okay. Then this is huge, and this is one of the reasons I really like our document is we have a whole section here on negotiation. Negotiation is critical to allow these agreements to move forward. If you don't properly negotiate, I've seen in the past agreements could take over a year because just the flow of how the negotiations are going, who's the person that it should be talked to, who shouldn't it be talked to, what's the right email address, etc. So you really have to establish within your own company, for both as a supplier and the end user, this whole negotiation concept. You should, in our template we bring out about having this set up to improve and facilitate the flow of the negotiations. Okay, next under the review section, we're talking about the language. I have experience looking at some quality agreements that were very, very lengthy, and they were written in such a strong legal language, you had to read it 3 or 4 times to say, what are they really talking about? So in a quality agreement, you want to be very clear, concise, and make it very easy to understand. It should not be ambiguous. You want as much as possible to be black and white. When you start having gray concepts in there, then that becomes a problem later on, interpreting it and saying, and making sure it's really a living and working document for you. And another concept that you want to make sure you cover in these is that it's not just legal, it's not just quality, it's not just manufacturing from the supplier end looking at it, or on the end user end. It's all these groups should have, especially the quality and the legal, should have representation. Because you don't want to find out after your agreement is created and you had, just one party looking at it, saying only quality look at it, and then legal comes back and says, hey, this is not legally binding because of A, B, and C. And then after 3 months of negotiations, you have to go back to the drawing board. The other thing is you have to make sure that people are qualified to do that, and that's our next section. Who are the authorized people to review the documents? Who are the authorized people to sign off on the documents? again, if you have the wrong people doing that, or it doesn't go to the right people, that could create problems down the road. I'll just give you an example of why this is so important. I had experience years ago working for another company that we were buying a product from a vendor, and we were taking their C of A, and then we were doing the tests to release it, but we had some additional tests that we did. And this was going fine for a few years, but then all of a sudden our extra test it was failing. So then we went back to the supplier and said, hey, we can't accept this because, this test is failing. And since this was a product that was in the company for years already, we just assumed that they knew all about this test. What we found out was, well, there was no quality agreement. There was no mention anywhere of this extra test we were doing, and that created a huge issue for us. Had we had a quality agreement in place that listed we are doing some additional tests or the additional requirements above and beyond what you do, that could have prevented that from happening. And then this last section on this slide is maintenance. Okay, how do you maintain these agreements? Where do you keep them? How do you store them? Is it paper? Is it electronic? Well, there's pros and cons to every one of those things. But it's important for you to be able to reference your quality agreements whenever if something comes up, or if even just on a periodic basis. So you have to say, hey, this agreement was signed a year ago. Is it still meet our needs from both parties? So these are not, while they're assigned under the official time frame, they're legal documents. However, things change with companies on both sides. And both companies might want to come back and say, hey, we've been looking at this. Our business has changed. We need to change this. And you negotiate from there. And that concept should also be covered in your quality agreement. How do you do that if you need to negotiate and change once it's signed? Next slide, please. Okay. One of the things we want to make sure we had available to everybody is just a sort of a sampling of references that could be utilized when you yourselves are creating your own quality agreements. There's all different industries out there, and there's all different needs and requirements and regulations. So if there's some very specific needs that for an end user like a pharma or biotech company or medical device company needs because of regulations, that should be called out in the agreement. Hey, this isn't just our requirement, this is because of this agency, because of this group, we need to have that. And that should be spelled out in your agreement. So here we just have a few here from, the first one is for pharmaceutical and drug products. The next one is for active pharmaceutical ingredients. And you see some of the headings there, and this is not just based in the U.S., this is truly global. We're talking about the first part is the U.S. with 21 CFR, and then EU directives. We talk WHO is referenced here, the ICH guidelines as well, EduLex. Okay, so this is a good tool. It's not all-encompassing, but it's a good starting point, especially for smaller companies. If you've never had a quality agreement before, this is an excellent resource for you to say, where do we go from here to get this regulatory information. Next slide, please. Okay. Also, what we researched when we did this, we found out that, we're not living in a vacuum. There's a lot of other trade organizations or industry organizations out there as well. So we reached out. Some of us even sit on more than one committee, not just Rx360, and we made a collection of different industry guides and templates that are already out there. So the first one is IPEC, which is they have a quality agreement guide and template. Okay, well, that's very specific for excipients. Right. Then we have for APIs, there's the Active Pharmaceutical Ingredients Committee's Quality Agreement Guideline and Template. Okay, and then for single-use biopharmaceutical products, we have the Bioprocess Systems Alliance, and there's a consensus on a quality agreement template. So as you can see, these are three very different types of suppliers, and they have very specific needs that might not all transcend between each other. So again, this is another reason why we decided to do a generic guidance document. So hopefully it'll be useful to all industries. But at the same time, we'll direct people to, if you have very specific industry needs, here's where you could go. And here's where you can get more information about your specific industry needs. Next slide, please. All right, another thing we put together, we thought about, is a content matrix. And this is, again, it's also in our appendix. So we said, well, where would certain key quality agreement topics that are fairly standard that you see there, where would they apply to? So this is, again, this is not binding. This is not a requirement here, but this is a guide. So if you look at the left, where it says the topic, we talk about regulatory authority for GMP inspections, the right to audit, documentation/records, change notification/change control, annual product reviews/product quality reviews, deviations, investigations, out of specification, complaints, recalls, regulatory reporting, subcontracting, which is a very key thing that we highlight in our guide, and it's very important. Raw material, supplier management, supplier qualification. Okay, so those are key quality topics that I've said already. If you look at the right, we'd say, okay, here's the different suppliers. So in each box, if those quality agreements would apply to that type of supplier, we put an X in there. And if we thought it didn't apply to it, we would just leave it blank. And the ones with the asterisks may apply, may not apply. Now, that's not to say that if your supplier is making you packaging components and you have a vested interest or a need to have them do some type of annual product review for the products that they send you, it doesn't, just because we didn't check it off there, it doesn't mean that you can't ask for it, but it means generally in industry you wouldn't be asking for that from a packaging component supplier. Or under general chemicals and ancillary materials, you're generally dealing with companies that are not regulated by the FDA. So the first one would sort of be a moot point about regulatory authority of GMP inspections if they're not regulated by the FDA or any of the regulatory bodies in the world. So we try to, as much as possible, break it down into the key supply groups. This doesn't cover everything. It's not all-inclusive, but this is a good collection of the main ones that companies would use. API, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, excipients. Again, these are drug products and chemical products that you use to manufacture drugs. Pharma products, okay, that's a general category. Medical devices, as well for packaging components, general chemical and ancillary materials, lab contract, which would probably also cover not just laboratories but service providers as well, like calibration houses or validation consultants, and carriers. These are the people that bring your materials to you and take your drug products away from you. Next slide, please. All right. Another really good thing that I like about this, and as you can tell, I'm very excited about this document. We spent a long time putting this together, but I think we did a good job, is we have the section in it where it will tell you, say, for example, multi-site agreements. And we have all the pros in there and the information of what you need to consider and everything. And we have a process flow chart in there for that particular section. But at the end of the section, we have talked to all the members of the committee and say, hey, do you have any best practices, something that really worked for you? And if we did, we highlighted that at the end of the agreement. So here, for the best practices for multi-site agreements, we said use appendix matrix tables to display product, sites, contracts, etc. Allow the appendix information to be updated without having to reapprove the entire agreement. So you would have a separate rev just for that appendix. Use pre-approved element tables to avoid additional review at each site. So these are things that our committee members and their companies, they did, and they found it to be very beneficial in when they're dealing with multi-site agreements. And we have this for pretty much every section in our document that we have our best practices listed there. Next slide, please. All right. One of the key things that we try and do in Rx360 and our supplier-led working group is whatever project we put out, whatever we do, we want it to stay current. So we're not just publishing something and we do it and 5 years later it's the same exact document. No, it's all our documents are living, breathing documents. So, for example, our supplier assessment questionnaire that we put out a year ago, we've already have a subcommittee set up and they're already holding routine meetings. We're collecting feedback from people on our questionnaire and say how we can improve it, or hey, you didn't think of this idea. And we evaluate it, and if it makes good sense and it adds value to improving it, we update it and we improve it. So the same will be for this guidance document. As industry practices change, as regulatory concepts change, as just the way of doing business changes, we're going to try and stay part of that, at least equal to it, and update our quality guidance document for quality agreements. The only way that we can really assure that we're getting the industry part of it is for people, our members, to come up and share their ideas with us. So as I said earlier, one way you could share is to be part of our committee, but you don't have to be part of our committee to give us ideas. If you take this document, you look at it and say, hey, I have a best practice. I didn't see this in here, but this is going to work and this is going to help them out. Share that with us. Email the Rx360. We will have that information. It will be posted at the end of this presentation. We want to serve the membership. We also want to go past the membership. You're welcome to share this guide or let people know about it that are not Rx360 members, so they could be aware of this and they could use this in their daily work. And maybe it'll have them think, hey, Rx360 is doing some good things. Maybe we should become members of Rx360. But keeping current, getting back to keeping current, we want your input. We want your feedback. Okay, the best, thing for all of us that are on this committee is if we see somebody comes up to us at a conference, we meet somewhere at an airport as we're traveling, or just somewhere on the phone, and you pull out of your briefcase a dog-eared, ripped up, outlined, notated version of this and say, hey, I got some comments for you. I think this might help you out. That's great, because that's what makes these things stronger and makes it better, is getting the feedback, for getting people involved, getting everybody connected. And that's one of the reasons why we chose this to do, because this is, as again, I said, a very critical document. This is something that everybody's living every day, having to deal with quality agreements. And it's also, I'm going to stress again, becoming more of a focus point as regulatory bodies are putting more emphasis on it, and companies are seeing that, hey, the best success for them is to consider their suppliers an extension of their own company. And this quality agreements are the mechanism to help you do that. Next slide, please. All right, well, at this time, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to me talk on this. We'd like to open it up for questions, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask us.